What's happening, everyone? TomGorian here, and with the 2023 Formula 1 season getting underway this weekend in Bahrain, it's time for me to put my hand in the jar of cookies and to share and make a video on the F1 23 season predictions. Who's going to be the drivers, who's going to be the constructors, who's going to be the dark horses, and who's going to be the major upsets and disappointments of the 2023 Formula 1 World Championship. So, Year 2 of these new regulations, and with testing now pretty much done, I think we have a decent indication as to how the pecking order may or may not fare as we're heading towards the first race of the season. There are a couple of stories that we do know as far as, which cars have performed and which teams are not performing or pretty much disappointed. We know the stories about Aston Martin and pretty much the rumours how Aston Martin could be on the same pace as Mercedes this weekend, so that's something to be interested about. And also, McLaren, they're not really happy with their car. They've admitted that they've literally went in the wrong way with the car design, and they're not expecting any type of rebuild of their car until maybe Baku or even Silverstone in Austria. So yeah, a lot of things to talk about in this season predictions and preview video. But before we get started, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe for all F1 2023 content. I'll be trying to do as much instant reactions to each race as I can as we enter this season, which actually will be marking 20 years since I've started watching Formula 1, so that's quite mad. But yeah, here we go. Let's get underway with the F1 23 predictions. I'm going to start with the constructors first, and then obviously I'll end with the drivers. So let's get started. In 10th place, I've got Williams. I don't really see Williams making a massive leap this season. I think they will be. I think obviously it's the second year of the regulations, so all the teams will slightly be closer. I think Williams will be more closer to the other teams in the lower midfield compared to the bigger teams and the faster ones. I do see Williams scoring a couple points, especially with Logan Sargent and Alex Albon. I think Sargent will have a good rookie season. I think he'll be competitive with Alex Albon in the first half of the season, but I think with Albon's experience, I think he'll pull away as far as the head-to-heads in the second half of the season. I do expect Williams to score points, probably just over 10 points this season, but I don't really have them competing in the midfield as far as the other teams are concerned. So Williams in 10th. This is probably one of the first, controversial takes I'm going to have this video. AlphaTauri 9th. I don't really see any direction or any movement as far as where AlphaTauri are going to go with their car and their pace this season. I do see teams like Alfa Romeo, Haas, Alpine, and Aston Martin jumping them in the midfield this year, and there's nothing really that's convincing me that AlphaTauri will do wonders this season. Obviously, they've replaced Pierre Gasly with literally Nick de Vries. Nick de Vries, obviously F2 World Champion, Formula E World Champion as well, and he's making his Formula 1 debut this weekend. I do expect Nick de Vries to score a lot of the team's points. I don't really expect anything from Yuki Tsunoda this season, and I think this is the season that Yuki will get replaced by someone else this season. So I do feel like Nick de Vries will carry AlphaTauri, but I think AlphaTauri will slip in the pecking order. Another controversial take, 8th place, I have Alfa Romeo. Now, obviously Alfa have pretty much built a new car, which is already in F1 22. I do expect them to have the same trajectory as they did last season. A decent, first race, second race, but as the season goes on, I feel like they will start to fall back in pace while the other teams in the midfield will overtake them and close the gap. Just like Williams and AlphaTauri, I don't really expect an aggressive development rate from Alfa Romeo. To be honest, I think Guan Yu Zhou, I don't think he'll do anything compared to Bottas. And yeah, I just think it's just going to be one of those seasons for Alfa Romeo where it's just constant disappointment. I don't really see them making Q3 a couple times. But we won't know anything until the first race of the season. So I could be spot on, and I could be, horrifically wrong about Alfa Romeo. According to Bottas, the car, no limitations, and the car apparently feels nice to drive, but we won't know anything until the first race of the season. 7th place, I've got McLaren in 7th place. I think McLaren, out of any of the teams, have had probably the most disappointing pre-season testing out of any of the teams. I do feel like there's a sense of wanting more as far as out of testing. I think Piastri and Norris really did expect more from the car, and I do feel like the first quarter of the season, I think that's when they'll be at the slowest. I don't think they're going to make Q3 at all in the first 4 or 5 races, maybe even heading into like Monaco and Canada. But apparently they're working on saving the car around Baku. But even when they do make upgrades, I don't feel like that's going to be enough to close the gap towards the other midfield teams this season. So I don't really expect anything from McLaren, and to be honest, I do feel like this is the season where Lando will make his mind up and he will leave the team at the end of his contract. Reports obviously have been going around that Lando Norris is starting to show his frustration. Obviously there was that report that Lando did punch a wall, apparently, according to Will Buxton. But yeah, you can really feel the frustration with Lando Norris. He's literally been in Formula 1 now for nearly 4 years, and he's only had, maybe 1 or 2 race-winning cars. Well, probably 1 in 2021, but 1 in 3 years, 1 in 4 years. Time is running out for McLaren, I will say that. 6th place, I'm going to go Haas. And it's not because Haas are not good enough to reach 5th place, but I think it's just the gap between 6th, 5th and 4th. I do feel like Haas have benefited a lot in these regulations, and they are, quick starters as far as the first race and the second race are concerned. I think Hulkenberg's coming back. He's racing for the first time since 2020. And I feel like he'll have a lot to prove as far as, him, being a consistent point scorer. And if a race like Germany 2019 happens again, where it's, mixed conditions, it's raining, it's dry, there's a couple of safety cars, I do feel like Kevin Magnussen and Nico Hulkenberg could really be lucky and get like a top 6 finish. I do expect, Haas to be in that solid fight as far as, just out of Q2, a couple of Q3 appearances here and there, and I do expect the head-to-head between Magnussen and Hulkenberg to be very, very tight as we head towards the second half of the season. But I do feel like Haas will do enough to beat AlphaTauri, Alfa Romeo and McLaren and Williams in the Constructors. P5, I'm going to go Aston Martin. I think Aston Martin are going to be the team that's going to shock most of the paddock this season as far as how quick the car is. And there's already been reports that that the car is already matching or could match the Mercedes this weekend. But once again, I think if Aston Martin do have a quicker car than the Mercedes, I don't think they're going to keep it up. I think it's just going to be one of those things where, they're quick to the point where, we enter Spain and Monaco and Canada, and then they start to fall off. And then by the end of the season, they will be overtaken by Alpine in the Constructors' Championship. I do feel like Fernando Alonso will be carrying the team, plus also Lance Stroll will be missing pretty much the first 2 races because of his injury. I don't expect him to race in Bahrain, and I don't expect him to race in Saudi, even if he gets cleared. I don't know what to expect from Drugovich if he does race this weekend, but, I think the team will be carried by Fernando Alonso, and I think Alonso will be looking to prove a point to the entire paddock as far as how good he is in a car that could be more competitive than the Alpine. Speaking of Alpine, I've got them 4th. I don't really see them, going back this year, even though they didn't really show their hand in winter testing. But yeah, I think with the new addition of Pierre Gasly will have a point to prove. He's been at the Red Bull Junior program for all this time, and this is the first time now where he's in a new environment, a new team, and yes, he's got a teammate that he's had a rocky relationship with, but I think the pairing of Gasly and Ocon, it's an all-French lineup and an all-French team. Otmar Safnauer was there, again, he was there last season. I think they're going to retain 4th place as far as the Constructors, and I think the gap between Aston Martin and Alpine compared to the top 3 teams, that will be more closer than it was last season. So I do expect Alpine and Aston Martin to get 1, 2, 3 podiums this season. It just depends on how the races go and if they're at the right place at the right time. So Alpine in 4th. Right, top 3. Who will finish 3rd? I've got Ferrari. Ferrari will finish 3rd in the Constructors this year. I think the replacement of Binotto for Frederick Vasseur, I think that's going to have a positive impact, but I don't expect anything from Ferrari, and it's a tradition in Formula 1 where the first 2-3 races Ferrari do well, they win a couple races and they have the pace, but they just don't have the longevity and the durability to fight with the Mercedes or the Red Bull for the championship. It's happened so many times, and it happened last season. The fact that Ferrari's last win was at Silverstone last year in July, that just shows how badly, Ferrari fell off this year. And to be honest, I don't really expect anything from Sainz. I don't expect anything from Charles Leclerc, other than an early decent start, and then they're just going to fall off as they usually do. So Ferrari will be 3rd, Mercedes, and then Red Bull. I think Mercedes will come out swinging this season. I think they're going to go more aggressive as far as race strategy. They're going to take more risks. I think they might have a better car than Ferrari. Not in the first quarter, but I definitely say as we enter, Silverstone and then Hungary, and then after the summer break, I think that's when Mercedes will really overtake Ferrari as far as the constructors and having the second best car. But I think it's going to be like a 2013 season again, where it's going to be Mercedes versus Ferrari, other than Mercedes versus Red Bull or Ferrari versus Red Bull in that retrospect. I do have Red Bull winning the Constructors' Championship. I don't see how anyone can really... I don't think any team has the car to really compete with Red Bull on a race-to-race basis. And even if they do slightly, I do see Red Bull extending the margin as we enter Hungary, Spa, just like last year. What Newey has done with the side pods is it's an evolution of the all-conquering RB18, and I don't see that changing. I think Verstappen is in the form of his life. He went on a crazy win streak. He had 14 wins last season, and I think that momentum isn't going anywhere. And I think with Perez as well, I think Perez will have a better season than he did last season, and I don't really see Mercedes or Ferrari really going and challenging the Red Bull and taking the fight to Red Bull to the point where the constructors go to the last race of the season, or even worse, Red Bull but go behind one or both the teams. But yeah, in a dream scenario, I really wish Red Bull and Mercedes and also Ferrari to be tied on points for the constructors or something, but I don't see Mercedes or Ferrari beating Red Bull this year, even with the cost cap punishments as far as the wind tunnel time and all that stuff. I still feel like Red Bull will be the team to beat this season. Right, Drivers' Championships. All right, I don't know if I should just go for the top 10, but I'm just gonna go for the literally from 20 to 11, and then I'll get the top 10 out the way. 20th, Logan Sargent. 19th, Alex Albon. 18th, Guangyu Zhou. 17th, Yuki Tsunoda. 16th, Nico Hülkenberg. I think Hülkenberg will slightly do well, but yet again, I think he'll drop off. 15th and 14th, Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris respectively. 13th, Valtteri Bottas. 12th, Kevin Magnussen, and Nick De Vries will be 11th. I do feel like Nick De Vries will be the dark horse into this season. And listen, you don't just win the Formula 2 and the Formula E championships over nothing. I think Nick De Vries is just as good, if not better, than what people say he is. And I think he'll cause a lot of surprises this season. Right, top 10. 10th, Lance Stroll. I do feel like the reason why he'll be in 10th is simply because he's going to probably miss the first 2 races of the season. And if you want to be technical about it, I'm going to put Felipe Drugovich around about 15th or 16th. I don't see him, racing more than 2 races this season. He's probably going to race in Bahrain, and he's probably going to race in Saudi as well if Stroll isn't cleared or if they don't have confidence in Stroll. But yeah, I feel like those 2 races will be key for Lance Stroll, as far as him not making either 8th or 7th. But I do feel like he's going to be in 10th place this season. Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon in 9th and 8th. I feel like the head-to-head rivalry between between Gasly and Ocon will be quite even. Obviously, these two have experience, and they can provide podiums and race wins if the situation is right. I do expect that Alpine to be challenging for top 6 or top 8, and even in a chaotic race, maybe challenging for a podium or 2. Obviously, Gasly won in Monza 2020, Ocon won in Hungary 2021, and you can obviously say that, their cars that they ran were nowhere near race-winning cars, especially Gasly in the AlphaTauri. But I think it's just about right place and right time, and I think the head-to-heads in both qualifying and in the race will be really tight. Hopefully, as a fan of Alpine, hopefully they don't make contact and they can, help each other out more than hold each other up. But knowing Ocon, he's going to be more aggressive towards Gasly, and I think the real-life issues between Gasly and Ocon will be shown this season. So Ocon and Gasly, P9 and P8. P7, Fernando Alonso. I've said this multiple times, I feel like with his move to Aston Martin and with the rumours of Aston Martin having the 4th best car maybe, as we enter Bahrain, I think Alonso will have something to prove this season, and I think he's going to get a lot out of this Aston Martin, but it does depend though on how durable and the longevity of that Aston Martin, as far as if it's really a top 4 contender this season. I don't expect them to challenge the Red Bulls or the Mercedes or the Ferraris, but I do feel like Alonso will be the one that's taking the fight to Ocon and Gasly instead of Stroll or Dragovic. But I think during the second half of the season, I think Alonso will be more consistent, and I think he's going to achieve that 7th place. Right, top 6. The 2 Ferraris, the 2 Mercedes, and the 2 Red Bulls. Right, who gets P6? Carlos Sainz. I've got Carlos Sainz in P6. I'm not expecting anything from Carlos Sainz this season. I can't lie, I was a little bit disappointed with Carlos Sainz last season. I thought he could have brought more, especially in the first quarter of the season, and the fact that he only got 1 win, and that was at Silverstone. Yeah, I don't really expect Sainz to do better this season than he did last. I do feel like he's going to get trounced by Leclerc, and there might be a couple of team orders here and there as far as them favouring Leclerc as far as strategy or just wanting to win races. So I do feel like Sainz will let Ferrari down in the Constructors' Championship. 5th place, this is going to be controversial. Lewis Hamilton in 5th. I think the first half of the season he'll have a better first half than he did last season, but I think in the second half, I think that's when he's going to fall away compared to the Red Bulls and even his teammate. I do expect Hamilton to have more confidence in the car. I do expect him to have a couple of pole positions here and there, and maybe even more podiums, even a race win also, but I just feel like in the head-to-heads compared to him versus George Russell, I think Russell will send that message as far as, Mercedes is now his team, and I think Russell will be more confident and more quicker in the W14 than what Hamilton will be. So Lewis Hamilton in 5th. Sergio Perez in 4th place. I feel like with the momentum that Max is on at the end of last year and what the car is capable of this year, I think Perez will be... I think it'll be a whitewash when it comes to the head-to-heads with Verstappen, but I think Perez will be, will be there as far as constant podiums, constant wins maybe. Probably a couple more pole positions there, but I think Perez won't have a better season than Russell or Leclerc or his teammate. Right, top 3. Right, who is in third? I'm going to go with Charles Leclerc. I think the whole change between Bonotto leaving and Frederick Vasseur coming in, I think that's going to do wonders for Charles Leclerc as far as maybe the first half of the season. I think he might win the first 2 or 3 races, but I think after Miami, I think Red Bull will play catch up, and then it's just a matter of if anyone can stop Verstappen in this case. I don't really expect I don't think Leclerc's going to win the world title this year, and I do expect Mercedes to have a much more competitive car compared to the Ferrari. We've already heard the rumours how Leclerc said that the Red Bull does look quick, and how Ferrari need to sort out their issues as far as either straight line speed or cornering. But yeah, I don't really expect Leclerc to be, a consistent challenger for the World Championship this season. George Russell and Max Verstappen round out P2 and P1. I think George Russell is going to get second because I think he's going to be the one that's going to really send that message to Mercedes, and he's going to take the fight to Max Verstappen. I do expect this season to be like a 2013 type of season where, you have Ferrari and Mercedes in the mix, and you have the pole position here and there. But when it comes to the second half of the season, I think Verstappen will run with it. And I don't see anyone challenging Verstappen when the summer break happens. I think this could be a repeat of last season, where Verstappen goes on a 4-race, 5-race win streak, and he could maybe tally or equal his wins of last year. I don't think he's going to get 14. I think he'll get around about 8 or 9 race wins. But I think it's just more about the consistency this year more than just the race pace as far as the Red Bull and the Mercedes are concerned. I do expect the Mercedes to be more competitive in the first quarter of the season, but I have to be honest, I think that Red Bull looks way more quicker. The RB19 is probably more quicker than the RB18 was, and I think the gap between Mercedes and Ferrari compared to Red Bull will have slightly decreased, not by much, but I don't think it's going to be enough to the point where you could say George Russell will take the fight to the last race of the season, or it'll be like a 2007 scenario or anything. But I do see Verstappen once again winning the Formula 1 World Championship and becoming a 3-time world champion. So Verstappen, Russell, Leclerc, Perez, Hamilton, and then Sainz is my top 6, followed by Alonso, Ocon, Gasly, and Stroll. And I also have Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari, Alpine, Aston Martin, Haas, McLaren, Alfa Romeo, AlphaTauri, and Williams as the order in the constructors. As far as I'd say surprise of the season? Surprise of the season? Either Alonso winning a race in the Aston Martin, or I'd say Ocon or Gasly getting a podium. That's what I think. I want to be realistic about this. I think it is possible for Alonso to try and get a win, and if there's ever a time to win, it's probably now, the first couple of races of the season. But like I said, we won't know anything until the first practice session or the first qualifying session of the season. And hell, if I'm right, I'm right, and if I'm horrendously wrong, then I'm horrendously wrong. But that is my F1 2023 season predictions. Max Verstappen to be a triple world champion, and Red Bull to retain the Constructors' Championships heading into 2024. So yeah, that's that for this video. If you are excited for the 2023 Formula 1 season, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe for F1 2023 content, instant reactions, race previews, and all of that other stuff. But yeah, thanks for watching. Make sure to leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video. In a bit.